On this episode of Who Dem.
All of that hinges on the idea that illegal immigrants aren't worth supporting, or that immigrants aren't worth supporting, or that migrants aren't worth supporting, whatever terminology you choose to use for them. And that is where, like, we're losing on the left. Like, the dehumanization of the migrant community is how this conversation even comes about. Because if I found out that LA County was using funds to support immigrants, I would say, cool.
And we're rolling. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Who Dem podcast. My name is Damian Galvan. As always, joined by my wonderful co-host, Representative Gil Cisneros. And today we have a very special guest on, Russell Ellis, a.k.a. Jolly Good Ginger. Jolly, how are you? Jolly Russell, what do you prefer?
I prefer Jolly.
Jolly? Okay. Nah, that's good. Well, there you go, right? You've gone into the content creator bit fully now, huh?
Well, it's funny because you don't know how people are going to address you because it's not something you think about. When I made my social media profile, I didn't think people were even going to watch it. And then my first video went viral, and then now I'm, got followers. And in the comments, they started calling me Jolly. I'm like, that's weird. I didn't expect that. But then over the last 5 years, I've become so accustomed to Jolly that Russell's weird to me. So.
Yeah. I feel like that's the case with a lot of online content creators too. I remember growing up, for me, FaZe Clan was the big thing, and I remember anytime that are you familiar with FaZe Clan?
Not at all.
Okay, well, they're a video game group of guys, and they start with the prefix FaZe, and then their name will come afterwards, so it would be like FaZe Jolly for you, right? I remember when internet personalities finally started getting like notoriety online, they started like going on different shows and whatnot. They would just call all of them FaZe because it was their first. It was the first part of their name, so everyone that went on was FaZe. So
that makes sense.
That's awesome. And in terms of being a content creator, like what actually pushed you to want to do that, that type of advocacy online? Because it's definitely not easy.
So like everybody else in 2020, I was laid out of my job. And I'd never been laid off before. I had no idea what to do with my life. And I was stuck in the house. I think the trend said I was bored in the house and in the house bored. Nice. And I found myself doing something that I swore I would never do, and that was argue with people in Facebook comment sections. At the time, the dominating conversation was police brutality in America. George Floyd had just got murdered. Everyone watched that happen. And I was arguing with primarily white people in comment sections, and what I found was they just say the same shit over and over. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to keep repeating myself to these people. And I had this brilliant idea one night. I'm being sarcastic when I say brilliant, but it turned out to actually be brilliant. But I'm going to make a video, 60 seconds, keep it short for short attention spans, and put it on YouTube. And then when they would say something, I would just copy and paste the video into the comment section. You could just click the link. That's literally why I didn't. So I made this very first video about, people used to say more white people were killed by the cops than black people, and I broke it down mathematically how that's not true. And I heard about this new app called TikTok that people were using. And I was like, well, fuck it. I'll put it on here. It's 1 minute videos. It's a 1 minute video I made. So I put it on and I went to bed. And I woke up the next day and I fucking thought my phone was broke. I had a notification every 0.6 seconds. Bling, 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 bling. I was like, what is going on? And then before I could even figure out that the video had gone viral, a friend of mine called me, hey, your video of yours is on Twitter. I don't even have a Twitter. I'm like, what do you mean? I go find it on Twitter. It's got 22 million views on Twitter. It's got 6 million views on TikTok. I have no followers, but I got 6 million views. And
that was your first TikTok?
That was my first video. And then just like that, I had 10,000 followers. 10 days in, I got 100,000 followers. Wow. The rest is kind of history. So I just, kept following that video with more videos, responding to what people were saying. And over time, was blessed with this platform to be able to, share my opinion or my advocacy, as it were. So
yeah. And have you found like any difficulties with doing it online? I feel like it's almost vulnerable place to be putting out, a lot of information about yourself. What are some of those challenges that you face?
There's a lot, to be honest. So first of all, the one thing, there's so much to say, so I got to figure out how I want to say it like succinctly, but I'm not actually a public person. I don't like being super public. I'm actually a very private person. I used to be in military intelligence. I had a security clearance, and I was a human intelligence collector. My job revolved around me being a private person, right? And so I became accustomed to that type of lifestyle. Like, I don't like people looking at me. And now, boom, you're on Front Street, So that was odd and didn't feel good to me. And you go to the store and people say, hey, I saw you on TikTok. I'm like, oh, God, that's weird. But then also the internet hates nuance. If you don't know this, social media hates nuance. So it's, you know, it's either this or this. And if there's anything in the middle, shut up, you're wrong. And so that's hard to get used to, is having a conversation that is definitely a nuanced conversation, but finding a way to navigate having it online where people will listen despite the lack of nuance. It's hard to do. And then, of course, with the stuff that I talk about being social and civil issues and political issues, came the doxing and the death threats and the, you know, crazy stuff happening. So that took some getting used to as well. So
yeah, I could imagine. I remember I had a similar story too when I started doing podcasting in 2020 because of everything that was going on with George Floyd, and you know, we had my idea was basically like, you know, I'm always having these conversations. I'm always having these political conversations. Might as well record them and kind of have them as a time capsule. And I think that that's kind of the main thing for me. It was like, you know, the best thing that you can give another person is a conversation, in my opinion, right? You know, an insight into your perspective on the world is the best gift that anyone can offer. But then also, like, being able to go back now half a decade later and look at myself and what I was thinking then has been so interesting. And I'm just curious, and this goes for both of you, because now, Representative, obviously you're doing the podcast with us, and you're online, and there's TikToks and clips coming out of you, and you've been doing this for some time now. Have your kids had reactions to this? Because this is a new phenomenon that I've been experiencing, I think, for the first time, where I'm seeing some of my friends post about their parents, and their parents have more followers than them. And I'm like, this is usually not how it was growing up, right? Like, parents were like, what's Instagram? What's Twitter? What's YouTube? And now we're in a place where parents have more viewers, more subscribers, more followers than their children.
So my kids hate it. I got 5 kids. My oldest is 14, about to turn 15 next month. My youngest is 4, so he doesn't know nothing about it yet. But all my kids hate it. I've gotten social media famous over the years, and I hate sounding braggy, so I don't mean this to be braggy, but I can't go in public without being recognized everywhere I go. It's pretty much everywhere room I walk into, somebody's going to come up to me, if not multiple people. I just went across the street before this podcast to the restaurant, grab a bite to eat, and I walked up to the hostess to get a table, and she goes, "Hey, I follow you on Instagram." So this is like everywhere I go. And so, like, my kids, they're annoyed by it, you know, like, not in like a bad way, but like, we go out and they see somebody walking up, like, "Oh God, Dad, this is somebody who knows you from TikTok or something." But then school, they hate it at school, especially my oldest son. He's like, "Dad, please don't make embarrassing videos." So this is the funnest part about the whole thing. Is it used to be you have to go to school to pick your kid up to embarrass them. Yeah. I can embarrass them from the comfort of my own home. You know what I mean? A couple of years ago, I was doing a fundraiser for a guy, and I jokingly said, "Hey, if we can hit this last $2,000 in this 5 minutes," which, based on the pace we had been raising money, is not going to happen. I was like, "I'll do a twerking video for you guys." You know, it was a joke. There's no way we're going to get the $2,000. We did it in like 2 minutes. Like, wow. Oh, God. Ooh. So I had to post a twerking video. My son, like, "I'm not going to school. Forget about it." He was so mad at me. And my son didn't talk to me for like a week. So, yeah, it's been an experience for my kids. My elementary school age kids, they think it's fun because all the parents follow me and the teachers follow me. So they think it's cool that their dad is their teacher and their parents' favorite content creator. Not as cool for me because then I can't just go to school and be a normal parent, but you know, it's a unique experience. Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, my wife is a huge fan, and you know, like I told you, right, when I met you in person, was that she woke up the morning of the sit-in with Senator Booker and our leader Hakeem Jeffries in the House, and it's like, "Oh my God, look what I got to show you this video." They're like out there. You know, there's a sit-in on the steps of the Capitol, and she showed me your video that you had just posted. And I'm like, "No, that can't be real. They're not out there. There's no way." It's like 7 in the morning. It's like, what are they doing out there? And you know, and it was true. It was happening. Right. You were already, you had already found about it. I guess you were probably following Senator Booker and Hakeem Jeffries to kind of, and you got aware of it and you kind of put it out there. And that, I think, you know, your posting was what kind of led people. It definitely is what led my wife to say, like, "Oh my God, the Jolly Good Ginger is on there. He like posted this. This guy is always right. He never says anything wrong. It is there." And so you need to get out there right now, right away. And but no, she's a huge fan, and I tried to get her to come today. She just couldn't make it, but
that would have been awesome.
Yeah, but I wanted her to meet you, but it was a good thing, right? It's like I said, she's a big fan. She's somebody that she follows you, and so I think maybe I might have to start doing it. I'm still kind of skeptical about the whole thing. Like, I know it's a big thing, and that's one of the reasons we're doing the podcast now is there's a whole nother media out there that we have got to make ourselves accessible to.
Sure.
And but
well, like something you just said, I want to grab onto it and talk about because I think it's relevant to this conversation. Because I relate to what you're saying. Like, I'm skeptical. Listen, I'm 42 years old. If it wasn't for me being on social media, I wouldn't be on social media. As dumb as that sounds, it's super deep if you think about it. And the thing you just said, where he's always right. That is kind of like what happens on social media. I put a lot of effort into researching my facts. I put a lot of effort into making sure that I have accurate information, but just because it's important to me.
Right.
And the thing is, I'm not going to put a video up if I'm not sure about it. So it's pretty easy for me to be right a lot. Yeah. But, at the end of the day, clearly I'm still human, and clearly I'm going to get things wrong. Yeah. And what I've learned from social media is there's this parasocial mindset where us as influencers have gained a lot of trust of those who follow us, and where I take that as a responsibility and I correct myself when I'm wrong, and I try to, be a good steward of the truth. There are plenty that don't. Yes. And oh, Lord. And that is the problem with social media, is that it's easy for people to spread misinformation. It's easy for people to spread misinformation because once you've gained the trust of your audience, then they're going to take your word for it. And there's a ton of creators out there, and I'll go ahead and say it, the majority of them are on the right, that are agents of misinformation, and their audience buy it wholesale. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of what you see out there, right? Is that individuals will see something and it's wrong, and then they just kind of repost it again, or they just kind of talk over that video of like, oh, so and so said this, or I heard this, but without like checking the facts like you do, right? I think you've kind of taken on this role as it should be good, as a responsible. You may not think of yourself as a journalist, but as a responsible individual who's talking about things and putting out information, is that you feel that you have responsibility for the facts, and you want to do that, right? You want to make sure that the information that you're putting out there is correct, and I think that's so important. And like I said, I feel like a lot, especially on the right, they don't feel that same tendency. No. It's just about getting the information out.
And a result. They're all about getting a result. If I can get you to buy onto Trump's new plan, then who cares if the information is correct? Right. And there's a lot of conversation these days about how the right uses social media and how the left uses social media, and how Democrats have been slower to get on the new media train. You're right. I didn't consider myself as a journalist before. Now I do. Like, I'm more of an independent. I've learned that's the role I play. I even try to go out myself and get the news, like the Leader Jeffries and Senator Booker sit in. I try to go out and get the news, and I was the first one to post about that and put it on social media even before the media got it. And my goal, and I think a lot of goals of people like me, are to be stewards of the truth. And I think by doing so, we've gained the trust of Congress people and of our audience. But our goal has been combat misinformation, spread facts. Right. And that's just not as flashy and emotionally charged as spread hate and misinformation and make people, you know what I mean? Yes. And so I think in this conversation of how the right uses social media, how the left uses social media, I think that people, like consumers of right-wing social media, are so driven by emotion and hate that it's easier for them to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Guided in a direction through misinformation, right? Right. And whereas us on the left, we're trying to be factual and you know what I mean, educate each other, and we are this big tent party where we have a much bigger, diverse crowd underneath in our audience, and it's hard to figure out how to use social media to be as effective as the right, because we're not spreading hate and misinformation.
Yeah.
As weird as that sounds.
No, absolutely. And I feel like that was something, you know, I've said it on the show before, but obviously I was the one that kind of grew up in the social media generation. And I talk about how I was kind of taken into that far right online pipeline, being a kid on, you know, Instagram, being a kid on YouTube, being a kid on TikTok. And, you know, I'm happy that the Democratic Party is starting to get involved in new media. But over the years, this pipeline has kind of like been reinforced and been, you know, structured. And now if you go and you look up videos, you know, let's say you went through a breakup, you're trying to get in shape, you go and you look up videos on you know, how to work out. And the content creator that you go and you find is also promoting right-wing conspiracy theories. And, you know, right now there's kind of this idea that the pipeline starts and ends with Ben Shapiro. You know, Ben Shapiro is the entry to the pipeline, and that's as deep as it goes. But the reality is that there's a lot of young men in particular that fall further right into this pipeline, and they end up with I'm not sure if either of you are familiar with personalities, like I don't even want to honestly platform him, but Nick Fuentes. Sure. And you know, it's this slippery slope where once you enter the pipeline, you know, it might start with, oh, okay, you know, I have tougher, you know, I don't want open borders, I want, you know, stricter immigration policies. And then very quickly over the course of a couple years, I mean, or, you know, months, you're 13, 14, 15 years old. And you go from, okay, I want a stronger border to this group of people is, you know, harming my society. And
we don't have that on the left. And that's what you just said is an example of what I was saying. Is exactly that. The way the right uses social media, you know, Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA, they'll host a party on a college campus that has nothing to do with politics. They'll just leave their, you know, flyers, merchandise and stuff, merchandise around, and people who are otherwise apolitical say, Turning Point USA, let me go check that out. And then they're consuming. And again, they don't care about it being misinformation. They don't care. Right. They're going to just put it out there and you're consuming it. Or when you're going through a breakup and there's this, you know, relationship coach who is, if we cared about qualifications, is highly underqualified to be given this relationship advice. But they grab you in because you relate on an apolitical topic. Oh, you know, you're going through a breakup. It's because, and then they'll start saying these things like because women just aren't traditional women anymore, and men are got to be alpha males, and then those push you to this way, right? Where on the left, we don't have that. There's no such thing. We're not doing it, and I think we should. We should do it, right? I think. One reason my platform got popular was the juxtaposition of I'm Republican coded. When you look at me, right, I look Republican, right? I get that. I also look like a white supremacist. So when I come out saying, you know, Black Lives Matter and, you know, human rights are cool, whoa, what the fuck? That juxtaposition brought people into my message. Right. And I need to use that more, you know, because I do a lot of apolitical things. I ride motorcycles. I love riding motorcycles. I'm a big motorcycle rider. I play a lot of golf. I love golf. I shoot guns, probably better than most of these Republicans. Not probably, I do shoot better than most of these Republicans. And I think that people like myself and others should have these apolitical channels where we meet people on grounds that are apolitical and then open conversations up. Because the truth is, every conversation I've ever had with someone who's either in the middle or on the right, we can find a place where we agree. We can find, because we have so much more in common than we have in different.
You know, I think people gave my governor, Gavin Newsom, you know, a hard time because he went on, who was it?
Charlie Kirk
show, right? And we were like, oh my God, how could you go on that show? That's, you know, that's wrong. You shouldn't be doing that. And but I think we have to do that, right? And I think there are these things. I think, you know, we've talked about this before too, right? Kamala Harris not going on Joe Rogan, you know, was a big mistake. That could have really helped her out a lot, right? And I think, you know, I don't think Joe Rogan's necessarily like an individual who's kind of out there meaning to put bad content or bad information out there, right? But he lets people go out there and talk and really doesn't kind of stop them. And, you know, like, again, he's not a journalist type. He's a comedian. He's an entertainer, right? So he's not going to be one to step in to stop an individual from talking. If he doesn't believe this or believe that, he just is going to let them do their stuff. And, well, why aren't we people from the left kind of going on there to, like, you know, talk about our stuff and kind of get in there, right? And let it kind of, like you said, right, meet them where they are to kind of like, well, okay, maybe I should listen to that
I
side.
think the reason that Gavin Newsom got as much flack as he got, not because he went on Charlie Kirk's show, it's because he then capitulated to the idea that trans athletes are somehow problematic, and that's disgusting. And Gavin Newsom should be held to account for that and should be responsible for spreading transphobia. Joe Rogan is irresponsible with how he manages information.
Right.
Joe Rogan has been in the middle of multiple times of platforming to the tune of tens of millions of views, simply false information. That being said, I do agree. Why don't we as leftists go on Joe Rogan? He's irresponsible with the information that he allows on his platform, but we can be responsible for what we say when on his platform.
Right.
And I think somebody who's done it very well, done it way better than Gavin Newsom did, was Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg has done it very well, where he goes in these spaces and he stands his ground on his leftist views, but allows them to have their views and have a conversation. Yeah. Whereas Gavin Newsom went in and was like, oh, you're transphobic? Me too, bro. High five. That's not how we handle this, right? So I think you're right, 100%. We need to meet them where they are. But we also need to, because if I ask you this, who's our Joe Rogan?
Yeah,
right?
we don't have one.
Right. Midas Touch is getting there.
We need I want to respond to that. Who's our Joe Rogan?
Let's
so two things. With Charlie Kirk and Governor Newsom being forced to go on Charlie Kirk, he's forced to go on Charlie Kirk because we haven't set up a left-wing infrastructure like the Republicans have, because we don't have a Daily Wire, because we don't have a Turning Point USA on the left. We talked about it before the show. You know, Democrats have invested $500 million over the past 10 years into new media. Republicans have invested $1.5 billion. That's a 3-to-1 ratio. And the consequences for that are that you have once Democrats want to get into the new media space, you're forced to go onto Republican shows. And then on the point of the Joe Rogan and the left not having a Joe Rogan, the left did have a Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan endorsed Bernie Sanders, and Joe Rogan had Bernie Sanders on his podcast back in 2018 and 2019. And so I think that it's always an interesting conversation, around when is the left going to get their Joe Rogan? Because I think that almost asking that question is missing the point. Joe Rogan is as popular as he is because he wasn't manufactured to be the right-wing Joe Rogan. He's just authentic on his platform, or at least presents himself as authentic, and as a consequence of that is able to influence a lot of young men.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, which is why I agree with the congressman. Let's go on Joe Rogan, because I don't think it's a left-wing, right-wing thing. However, on the left, we do hold ourselves to a higher standard, which is a good thing, a moral standard, a standard responsible with information. And I think that we don't have somebody who's out there willing to – because, again, going back to our previous conversation, Joe Rogan's got it wrong a lot of times. Yeah. Joe Rogan has spread blatant misinformation. In his defense, and I'm not trying to defend Joe Rogan, he legitimately didn't know it was misinformation because he was very careless on his platform.
And that's my point, right, is that he just kind of brings these people on.
Yes.
Like he'll bring on Robert RFK Jr. to kind of talk about vaccines. But, Joe, like I said, Joe Rogan's a comedian, right? He's not an expert on these issues. And so he's not going to cut you off because he just going to let you spout your stuff.
What he believes in. So I think if we had someone on the left who had a show, got some people on, and let's just talk. And we let them get some shit wrong without stringing them up by their ankles, you know what I mean, when they get it wrong, then I think we could have our Joe Rogan on the left, right? But we don't. On the left, it works like this. You get it wrong one time, you're done, you're toast, you're out of here, we must cancel you. The left is very good at eating its own. And me personally, I've kind of adopted the idea of, well, then fuck it, cancel me. Because, I got into this whole thing because I legitimately care about the future of our country. I'm a veteran. I went to Iraq, Afghanistan. I wore the uniform for a reason. I don't want to see our country go up in a puff of orange smoke. But here we are. And so, I legitimately care about how this thing ends. And I legitimately care about the world that my children grow up into. Right. I legitimately care that my 3 daughters have autonomy over their own bodies. I legitimately care that they can marry who they want to marry. They can work where they want to work. And I mean that for my daughters and my sons. And just be themselves. And that all matters to me. And I'm of the mindset where I am going to make the content and do the things that I think push us towards that goal. And if you don't agree with me, fucking great. Do it your way. And if your way's better, I promise you, I will stop doing my way and join your way. But on the left, we are really good at criticizing without a solution. We're really good. That's not right. Ain't going to work. Here's the reason it ain't going to work. Okay, then what's your way? Well, I don't have a fucking way. I'm not doing shit. But I got a lot of criticism about how you're doing it. And that's what we do. We have a lot of criticism for each other, but we don't have a lot of solutions. And the answer is just go out and fucking do something.
Yeah. No, we have got to get better. I mean, there's a lot of things we can do better, right? I think in the Democratic Party, our messaging, but I think we have got to, like you said, right, listen as well, right? And we have to be able to kind of take in ideas and not just cut somebody off and like crucify them because they have a different opinion than you. And so we have got to be, like you said, right, we want to be an inclusive party. We want to be bring in these other ideas. And just because someone doesn't hold the same view as you on a policy or it doesn't mean that, you know, they're bad or they're wrong or it's like, you know, we always say you got to vote your district, right? You have to represent the people in your district. And sometimes they may be a little more conservative. Sometimes they may be a little more liberal, but they elected you to be the representative and that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do a show every Friday with Michael Cohen. And when I first started doing it, what's the feedback I get, right? Oh.
Michael Cohen?
Yeah, Michael Cohen. Yeah.
That's random.
It's the only Michael Cohen I know. And when I first started doing the show with Michael Cohen, of course, it becomes, oh my God, Michael Cohen believes X, Y, Z. And so on our very first episode together, I told Michael before we went live, I said, let's address it. Like on the fucking show, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And the answer is, hey, me and Michael don't agree on everything. First of all, I'm a raging fucking leftist. I'm going to let you know. I'm down with capitalism. I want to be a fucking socialist. That's where I'm at. Do I preach that every day, all day? No, because that's going to get us nowhere, right? Does everybody I talk to believe that? No. The Democratic Party is way too capitalist for me, right? But, you know, I understand what's going to meet my end goal. And the things that me and Michael agree on are Donald Trump is horrible for this country. Donald Trump's destroying this country. The policies he's passing is bad for everybody. So let me work with him and let's combine our platforms and let's work to, you know, get people together that may not have otherwise heard me speak and my people may not have heard him speak. And let's find where we have common ground and work together to defeat the fucking enemy. Because guess what? We defeat fascism and we get Trump out and fucking MAGA's gone and all the dust settles. Then I can say, okay, that's done. Now, Michael, this other shit you believe in, right? I don't like it. You know, then we can have a conversation about what we disagree on. Yeah. But we are literally in, you know, code red right now. And if we're only going to work with people that 100% share all of our ideals, then let's just hang it up, we lose.
Right.
Yeah, and that's kind of a topic that I did want to discuss today, too. The way that I talk about it is I call them moral purity tests, right? The left is constantly doing these moral purity tests, and it's really interesting because, you know, if we're looking at it like a spectrum, if you're on this side and you say, you know what, I want UBI, you know, or universal health care, and you're, you know, a little bit further to the right and you disagree with that, it's almost like you just can't talk anymore. Like you're not, okay, cool, we disagree on this one policy position, and that's it. Like that's it. We're not going to be, you know, we're not going to work together. It's the end of the road. And I feel like something that Republicans are particularly good at is overlooking those issues and also not doing it publicly. When they have disagreements, I feel like they're really good at doing that behind closed doors. And I'm talking about content creators here. I know that they did do like 12 rounds of voting the last time that they had to elect a House Speaker. So it's not always that they're, you know, discreet about them infighting. But when we do it, it's very much out in the open. It's public. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with the situation, but Ethan Klein and Hassan Piker, they just got into a huge online debate. In the same vein, you have Nick Fuentes going to dine with Donald Trump. And they asked Donald Trump, you know, well, Nick Fuentes is a neo-Nazi. And it's not like, oh, is Nick Fuentes a neo-Nazi? There's videos of Nick Fuentes going, I am a neo-Nazi, I am a white supremacist. Yeah. And Trump says, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whereas if it had been something, I feel like, you know, you had Democratic, you had Joe Biden with, you're gonna not invite them. You're not gonna invite someone that, you know, is a little bit further right or left than you. And I feel like it's something that that we have to figure out as a party. And I've heard it's Senator Chris Murphy talk about kind of a similar strategy too, where like first you kind of agree on, you know, Donald Trump is bad, the economy, you know, could be in a better place. We need, you know, paternity leave, maternity leave. You find those issues that everyone can kind of agree on. And you bring someone in, you know, that might be racist or might be a little bit homophobic. And once you've addressed the, you know, paternity leave, raising the minimum wage, all of these things, then you can have a conversation about the culture issues, the culture war problems. But I feel like Democrats are also quick to bite on the culture war problems that Republicans throw out there too.
Let me tell you what happens on both sides of the fence. People paint a picture. This is what a leftist looks like. This is what a rightist look like. Rightist is a funny word. And so when we're talking to people from the right, they've decided in their mind what I am, but without talking to me, right? Which is why being Republican coded works for me, because I've already broken down their initial barrier. Wait a minute. The guy doesn't have blue hair, right? He's not a 130-pound frail little man, right? So you're a leftist, right? And so they want to hear me for a second. And here's what I found is when we can talk about some apolitical shit. I'll give you a fine example of this. Where I live, my little town where I live, there's a lot. It's a purple town, but it's red leaning.
Sure.
And where I play golf, the golf club I play at, it's 99% conservative, right? Which I really didn't know until I'd been playing there for a few months and then had broached the conversation with a few people. I'm like, oh, God, I'm in a conservative golf club, you know? But where I live, there's not really another golf club to go to, so this is where I'm at. And I had been playing golf with the same group of guys for about 3 months. And one day, the one guy was like, went to the bar downtown after, you know, this round. You want to go? I said, sure, I'll go. And super funny story. We're at the bar, and we're now keep in mind we've never talked politics, me and these guys. We've only played golf and just bullshit and do things you do when you play golf. So they like me. We're friendly. Like we always play golf together. We have gotten to know each other in a very apolitical sense. We're at the bar drinking. Person comes up to me, hey man, fucking love your shit. Can I take a picture with you? We do a selfie. That happens 3 times over the course of about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. My buddy looks at me, okay, fuck it. Who the hell are you? You know what I mean? Like, I've known you for 3 months. Everybody wants a picture with you. I'm like, well, I'm online. I do social media. What do you do on social media? I do political and social commentary. So I told him, I said, this is the point where I'm going to tell you, I'm a raging leftist. You should know that before this conversation proceeds. Not because I'm worried about his response, but just so he knows what he's getting himself into. Yeah. And he found that fascinating because he himself is very right. This guy used to live, I don't want to dox him or put him out there who he is, but he used to live in another state, I'll say that. And he was a politician in that state, a Republican politician in that state. And so we got to swapping ideas. And he's like, well, what do you think about this and what do you think about that? The only reason we're having the conversation, the only reason he's listening to my thoughts is that past 3 months he got to know me as Russell. Yeah. Right? And so now he's like, well, shit. I like this guy. He can't be a leftist. Yeah. He can't be a communist. I love the guy. Yeah. Right? But then he found out that I'm very, very left-leaning to the point that after a few months of us having conversations, because he got to the point where we'd be on the golf course and he'd just bring something up. And we're talking about it, you know, riding on from hole 10 to 11, we're talking about something. And this guy has begun, like, leaning into some of my issues with me. He's like, you know what? You got a good point here. Yeah. I see where you're coming from here. But I had to get him to listen to me first. And the way I got him to listen to me first was to show him I'm not the picture you painted of leftists.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
I'm just a human being. Yeah. And I have a logical reason why I arrived to my thought, which goes to your other point. If we're just screaming at people without providing the logic how we arrive to our position, then we're also not winning any favors.
Time for a quick message from our sponsors.
This episode of Who Dem is brought to you by Elect Dems Now. We all know that podcasts are the future. They give us the chance to connect with our elected officials like never before. That's why Elect Dems Now is committed to helping voters engage with the people who represent us. Supporting organizations that bring us closer to our representatives is crucial to advancing and advocating for the change we want to see. Whether it's $5 or $50, every donation to Elect Dems Now helps shape our future and ensures a country we can all be proud of. Your support sends a clear message to candidates and elected officials. Connecting with you means connecting with America. To contribute and make a difference, visit electdemsnow.org today. Your donation helps build a world where we are all connected. Paid for by Elect Dems Now, electdemsnow.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
I study sociology here at GW too. I'm an undergraduate student. And Jane Addams, she's a sociologist. She used to do, she basically had these places where people would come in, these neighborhoods where people would come in, and they would form a community, right? They, you would be able to learn, you would be able to eat, you would be able to work inside of these same environments. And I'm pretty sure it was Jane Addams that she does this analogy, right? Or a metaphor, if you will. And she says, if you just see people dancing without listening to their music, you think that they're crazy. And I feel like that's kind of a lot of what's happened inside of this country right now, where we just see, those are the Republicans dancing. Look at them. They're crazy. They're just moving without actually listening to their music. And Republicans have done the same thing with us. And we've been divided on politics. And for me, it's really interesting because I kind of share in similarity with you the fact that I come from a racist county. I'm from Forsyth County, Georgia. And for a little bit of background, Oprah Winfrey once did a special in Forsyth County, Georgia called No Black Person Has Lived Here in Over 100 Years. And, it's difficult for me because I have a lot of really good friends that support a lot of the things that Donald Trump is doing. And, I love them and I value them as my friends. And you do a really good example, or you say that racism is a spectrum. And I feel like that helped me kind of understand the relationship with them that I have a little bit more, because they fall on that spectrum of racism. And, it's trying to figure out, how to have those conversations with them that are tough and are political, while also, we hang out and we're playing shuffleboard and we're playing poker and we're playing video games and we're going out to to Lake Lanier and we're on jet skis and on boats and we're having a good time. But always existing in the back of my mind is the fact that, if I wouldn't have had this close experience with these people, they would have just seen me as, another Mexican, another illegal immigrant, another, a part of the problem. But because I am close with them, it falls into, he's one of those good ones. He's one of the good ones type of ideal type, if you will.
I think that what we as on the left have to understand is most of our conclusions we've arrived through critical thinking, through education. It's funny when I hear people on the right say, people go to college and come out liberals. Yeah, dude, you're missing the point. You walk fucking face first into it. And here's the problem. It is super easy on the right for them to spread their ideologies because none of it's facts-based, all of it's feelings-based, right? Hey, man, women used to be this way when they have these problems. Hey, he's got a good point. We have these problems. None of that required research or qualitative data. None of that required a book. It just requires shit that makes sense in my head. Let's fucking run with it. And so their ideas are easy to appeal to the masses because it doesn't require any work. And if you put the work in, and if you challenge those ideas, because I grew up believing it. I grew up believing a lot of the bullshit. 13% of the population commits 50% of the crime. And then I can show you an FBI chart where more black people are committing crimes than white people. Then what are you going to say now? Mm-hmm. Well, you simply research this chart, and you research the data, and you read a fucking book, and you realize it's all bullshit, right? So here's the problem. And I'm going to tell you, this is what makes it really difficult for us on the left. For people, like in your situation where you're hanging out with your friends and these are all conservatives, like my situation where I'm hanging out with my golf buddies, find out 3 months into it they're all conservatives, for us to have a conversation that is fruitful with them, it is imperative that we can then articulate our position. And too many people on the left cannot articulate their position. I applaud people who've arrived to the position that human rights matter without doing a ton of critical thinking. But here comes the problem. When you run into your conservative mother or your conservative aunt or your conservative uncle, neighbor, friend, husband, wife, whatever, and they say, well, what about this? And you can't articulate the answer, it just solidifies their position. Mm-hmm. Whereas they don't have to articulate anything because it's just Neanderthal feelings, to be quite frank with you. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. And that's where we lose so much is people aren't putting in the work because, and I'll conclude with this, conclude this rant with this, to your point where you're hanging out with your friends and da-da-da, we must never make it a part where we're meeting in the middle and finding out what we have in common, and I don't challenge your bigoted ideas. We cannot do that. I can't make my friends comfortable as bigots. I can become friendly with you with the entire goal of changing your mind. But if I'm becoming friendly with you and then we just stay friends and you stay a bigot, we've failed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 No, I agree with that 100%, right? I think you want to move towards progress in that sense, right? It's like, how are you kind of working with you and kind of there? And if you think you can't change their mind, then why are you talking to them?
Bingo.
Yeah. But it is, I think I agree with you, right? It's like, people can't explain this. And I think that sometimes we just make it too damn complicated, right? Whereas, like you said, right, on the right, they keep it simple, they keep it emotional. And that's why you find out, like in some of the places where there are immigrants, you can't find any immigrants, but, somewhere in the middle of Iowa or something like that, they're worried about immigration.
I know, right?
And they're like, oh, they're taking our jobs. And I'm like, well, where? Not that I've never been to Iowa. Maybe one day I'll go there. But, I've heard it so many times from people who are like, oh, my God, they're just coming here and they're taking our jobs.
Not even that. They're eating the cats and they're eating the dogs.
Or that they're violent and they're criminals and they're committing crimes. And statistically, at the height of that rhetoric, we were at a 10-year low in crime.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's why, in terms of keeping it stupid, just having that question in your
they
pocket.
focus on one or two individuals.
Bingo.
Yeah. And this is like, the immigrants are coming here and they're committing these crimes. Just look at this guy right here, what he did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
And if that's happening on such a mass level, you'd have more than one guy, like challenging the idea. Because I do a lot of man on the street content. Mm-hmm. That's what we call it. That's the lingo in the biz.
Yeah, man on the street.
Man on the street content. And I've been to a ton of Trump rallies. Me and this other creator, Walter Masterson, we used to go to a lot of Trump rallies. And our big thing was just interviewing them. And they would bring up the immigration thing. Right. You know what I mean? And that's one thing I would ask them is, did you lose your job to an immigrant? How many immigrants were you? You know what I mean? Like just challenge them with basic ideas. Well. And it's always their neighbors, boyfriends, husbands, cousins, dog walker that it happened to. It's never them.
Yeah. And they kind of, like right now it's happening in LA County, right? They're like, I think it said the Department of Justice is going to open an investigation about how the county of LA has been using federal resources to support immigrants. It's not the case, right? It's not happening. But yet, just by them putting it out there, it kind of creates this scenario like, oh, they're wasting the federal funds in this democratic city. It's a sanctuary city. This is what they do. They're abusing our federal tax dollars, and we're having to suffer for it.
And all of that hinges on the idea, this is important, all of that hinges on the idea that illegal immigrants aren't worth supporting, or that immigrants aren't worth supporting, or that migrants aren't worth supporting, whatever terminology you choose to use for them. And that is where, like, we're losing on the left. Like, the dehumanization of the migrant community is how this conversation even comes about. Because if I found out that LA County was using funds to support immigrants, I would say, cool. Right? I'll give you an example, and I'm going to say this.
I get you, but there's laws, right? And so, look, the thing is, immigrants make a contribution to this community,
That's my point.
right? And they work their ass off, right? And they're not taking anything for free.
No, the return is net positive.
Yeah, they are contributing, and they're making a positive effect on the communities that they are living in, as far as going and building up that community and creating things, right? So the fact that anybody would ever say that they're just taking is 100% wrong.
Nonsense,
Yeah.
right? Well, I'll give you an example in LA right now.
Yeah.
Trump just signed an executive order 2 days ago, and as a veteran, this has strongly been pissing me the fuck off, is the executive order says that they're going to make a center for homeless veterans in LA, and they're going to build it with the funds that was previously being used for illegal immigrants, right? To house immigrants. And then everybody on the right says, oh, what now, Jolly? You're a leftist veteran. You're going to be mad at him for it? Yes. Let me tell you why. Because as a veteran, and I know plenty of people who agree with me, if taking care of homeless veterans must come at the expense of an entire other community, I'm not okay with it, right? Because we have ample money in our budget, the defense budget, to take care of these problems without saying, hey, we're going to take care of homeless veterans, but you people over here, now you're homeless, right? This is not the answer.
Yeah, and look, I think I'll use the Pell Grant as my example, right? Pell Grant can only go to, you have to be a U.S. citizen in order to have a Pell Grant there, like to get it. But California has made equal, like Cal Grants, not using federal funds, accessible to undocumented individuals to allow them to go to college, to allow them to earn an education. And I'm 100% fine with that, right?
Sure.
It's because that's not federal money. It's we're using our, California money that we've got in order to do that. And that's a decision I think that happened when Governor Brown was the second time when he was governor that he made that decision and it passed, right? So I think there are programs there, right, that we need to go and we need to help and to contribute. But I don't believe he's not going to build no.
I don't believe him for a second. Yeah. But just the conversation that we must take away from these people to give to these people as if it's this zero-sum game.
Yeah.
And the fact is that we spend more on our defense budget than the next 25 countries combined. Everybody knows it. It's not a secret. It's conversations happened 1,000 times. The money is there. If we truly cared about homeless veterans. See, veterans are always just a fucking talking point. Nobody actually gives a shit. I want to be honest. Because, we shouldn't send money to Ukraine. What about homeless veterans? Yeah. We shouldn't do this. What about homeless veterans? We shouldn't be in Vietnam. What about homeless veterans? When are we actually going to, take care of homeless veterans? By the way, LA County is the #1 county for homeless veterans in the country. You solve veteran homelessness in LA County, you can solve the problem across the country. And the answer is not by making another population homeless in the process. Right. We have the funds. And by the way, shout out to Senate Devermont, there are ways that you can solve homelessness in LA County without a sweeping legislation, without a big money spending bill. I won't go into it here, but there's ways to do it. So when I hear things like Donald Trump sign an executive order, it lets me know that him and his team has done fuck all to actually research the issue, because that's not the answer.
Yeah. His executive orders are just getting more ridiculous and everything. I think there was one I saw this morning that look, I want lower drug prices. I think we should be able to negotiate. Like the VA negotiates the cost of drug right. Department of Defense negotiates in order to keep the prices down. And we should be able to do that with Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, everything, right, that we use in order to do that to help bring the cost down. But him writing an executive order just saying that drug companies need to make sure in the next 30 days that they're going to lower drug prices. Like as if that's they're probably laughing at him right now.
Long-standing solution to something,
right?
And how do you have? Because by the way, hasn't he bragged about the fucking sweeping victory? How do you have the House? How do you have the Senate? How do you have the executive branch? But you have the least amount of laws put into the bills, or bills put into law, in the first 100 days than anybody else. He's signed more executive orders than anybody else. I think he signed 5 bills. It's like the least signed in 80 years or some crazy shit. How do you have the entire government and you can't pass a bill, right? You can't pass legislation because, like you said, these executive orders are not going to hold water.
Right. And the legislation they are passing is just not meaningful. I think we passed things on like regulations for refrigerators and stoves. Last week we renamed
shower heads.
Yeah, we renamed the Gulf of Mexico. They passed that, which the Senate will probably never take up anyway, so it'll never probably become law. But it's just ridiculous what they're doing. And I don't think he really cares about passing laws, right? He wants to pass his one big, beautiful bill.
Correct.
Right? That's going to keep enriching him.
Tax breaks for billionaires.
Tax breaks for him.
100%.
Yeah. And really, that's his. If he can get that, he's happy.
He's got one foot in the grave and one hand on a Big Mac. He don't care what it looks 10 years from now. Yeah. He doesn't care. Right? None of this. What the things he's doing, or how I should say how, not what, but how it affects us in 10 years, he couldn't give a shit. He's too narcissistic. He's got too big of an ego. He don't give a fuck. So the reason he's not passing legislation is he's not looking for long-term fixes.
Right.
He's looking for right now, right here, how does it benefit me? Yeah. You got a guy, by the way, who is literally allowing people to buy a meme coin for access to the government. This is corruption at the highest levels. You got a guy, by the way, in a government where you can't accept a gift over $50 is in the process of getting a fucking airplane that's worth $400 million. This is corruption at the highest sense. Oh, by the way, the airplane's going to be bugged. We all understand that. It's going to be bugged, and we're going to have people monitoring our president at all times.
I'm pretty sure there's a team of Chinese informants already kind of like getting that thing ready, and they're pretending like they're cleaning it or whatever, right?
And I'm sure they're going to have a way like, oh, you're in the air when we're having a dispute. Well, we'll take it out of there. Like, this is just dumb. Yeah. And then, you know, all of this open corruption because he is looking for how he can get rich right now, how he can build his wealth, and that's it. And if the country burns in 5 years, he couldn't give a fuck less. He don't care.
And that's the thing too with Republicans. It's always a whole lot of projecting, man. They spent what 4 years since 2020 complaining about how how Democrats have this master plan to bring in illegal immigrants through our famously fast, quick, and easy immigration system to speedline them and make them citizens so that they can vote for Democrats for generations to come. It didn't even take 100 days for Donald Trump to implement a gold card. Where the other day, one of his secretaries was making the joke that, I almost sold 10 gold cards at dinner the other night. That almost paid for my dinner. That's called corruption. You're right. It almost did pay for your dinner, and that's illegal. You can't just be admitting that. Correct. But, you know, they feel so empowered because of I'm still trying to find the because, to be completely honest, but I feel like a part of it has been the Ben Shapiro, like, facts don't care about your feelings, and this fact that the Republicans have kind of positioned themselves as the party of facts, while Democrats have positioned themselves as the party of emotion, or been positioned by Republicans as the party of emotions. I don't know exactly what it is, but one thing that I'm interested in hearing your perspective on it, because you've been on reality TV, is do you think Donald Trump takes all of that expertise that he had from being on The Apprentice and uses that to, you know, create mania and to create a frenzy in the media? He paralyzes the media. You know, he's able to captivate his audience. Do you think that that's all just reality TV skills, or is that just narcissism, or is it, where's the blend for you?
I think the only successful thing Donald Trump has ever done in his life has been reality TV, and that's because he wasn't in charge of it, right? So, like, the producers at, who did The Apprentice? NBC, I think?
It was on, it was on NBC.
NBC. So the producers at NBC, you know, made The Apprentice successful.
The same guy who did Survivor, right?
Might have been. I have no clue.
Yeah, I think
it's NBC. But those producers made that show successful, not Donald Trump. Sure. They also successfully duped everybody into thinking that he's a successful businessman because he's fucking not. If you look at Donald Trump in his, you know, trajectory of being a businessman, first of all, he's a Nepo baby. We often don't talk about that enough. He was born with a silver spoon, not in his hand, but up his ass. Because he, you know, he had everything handed to him. Right. His dad gave him the business. Then his dad passed away. He got like a $500 million inheritance. And then, by the way, his dad's business was built around the mafia in New York, the Teamsters Union. You couldn't get a fucking building contract in New York without going through the mafia. So Donald Trump learned that, hey, man, I'll just fucking work with the mafia and I'll get all the contracts. You don't got to be a savvy businessman. Just got to threaten people, throw them off the fucking 50th floor, you got a contract. And so, but every other business, because if you can name for me right now a successful Trump business outside of the real estate that he built with the mafia, I'll shut up and go away. But every other business that he's ever made has failed. Trump Steaks, Trump Casinos, Trump Airlines, Trump University, you name them all. He's failed.
The let's see, Plaza Hotel, he put into bankruptcy. He had to get rid of that.
Correct.
The Taj, what is it? The Trump Mahal, right there.
Correct.
Taj Mahal, yeah.
Well, no, whatever it was called.
Sure,
the Trump Mahal, whatever it was.
Trump Taj Mahal.
Yeah, you know, same thing. And
yes.
You know, whatever it was, right, when these properties, well, I was just a small shareholder. I wasn't really, but you can see him on The Apprentice. Welcome to my hotel.
Yes.
Welcome to my hotel. And then when they declared bankruptcy and then they had to close it was like, well, I was just a small shareholder. But, you know, the thing, there was a great documentary. It was one of the 30, I think it was a 30 for 30, one's on ESPN.
Yep.
Talking about the USFL.
Yes.
He ruined the USFL.
He did.
He put them out of business because he was, you know,
I know this story.
You know, they were like, hey, we play football during the summer. It's just an alternative to the NFL. He wanted it to compete with the NFL. He wanted them to move to run a schedule right along with the NFL so it would compete with it. And right in the tank.
And have you seen the letter that the other owner wrote to him? There's a letter out there. It's on there. You can Google it. One of the other USFL letters wrote it to Donald Trump. It's very scathing. But if you read the letter, it's like, holy shit, it's the same guy in 1980 that he is right here. You know, but everything you just said is my point. My point, I guess, to summarize what I'm saying here is he's a failed businessman. Again and again and again and again. And his real estate successful real estate is a facade.
It is. I will tell you the one thing he's been able to do successfully, right? Because he failed at all these things, the businesses, the hotels, whatever. He's been able to market his name.
100%.
And it's kind of like allowing people, like a lot of these things, some of these things he didn't own, but they're like, hey, especially when he was doing The Apprentice, we want to use the Trump name.
Yes.
You know, we're gonna put all the finance. We're gonna do this. We'll pay you so much just to use the Trump name and call it a Trump property. And they did it, right? So that is the only thing he's been able to do, right?
And the Apprentice created that facade that he's a successful businessman, that he's in the boardroom, and he'll tell you whether you have business savviness or not. But he don't. He has zero business savvy. The guy's a flunk of a business guy. He went to finance school and doesn't know the first thing about finance. He's an actual idiot. I mean, I'm not even. This isn't me trying to be a Trump hater. The guy is not intelligent.
No, he's not smart. Yeah,
he's not smart. He's not a business savvy guy. And oh, by the way, all these blue collar workers that vote for Donald Trump made a vast majority of his wealth by fucking over blue collar workers, by not paying contractors. Like there's contractors. There's the one guy, and it's a tragic story. You can Google this and go listen to the guy's story. He got contracted to build a hotel or something for Trump. You know, he has, as a contractor, puts the money up front for it, but then Trump stiffed him on paying the bill. He had to go to Trump to court and sue him in order to pay all his people, because he wants to pay his people. It's 2 years behind. Or 2 years after the project's done, he has to sell his entire company, all his equipment, and get a measly settlement from Donald Trump and paid all his people. And now he's broke, has no money, lost his entire business. He committed suicide. And this is the legacy of Trump. The legacy of Trump is he has left destruction, despair. He has left bankruptcy. He has left, the lives of other people in his trail. And without remorse, because he doesn't have a conscience. So for him to stand in front of people and say he's a successful businessman, it's a facade that needs to go away because a lot of people on the right bought into that facade. And that's why they voted for him.
It's crazy that... and I tell the labor guys this all the time, right? Is your people are always voting against themselves, and but I mean, he was pretty much said out in public, and he told Elon Musk, like, "Hey, if they go on strike, we're just going to fire. We're going to fire you. You get rid of them. Get rid of them." How is that supporting labor, right? And I always say, be aware of the person who tells you exactly what you want to hear. And that is exactly what he does to these guys. It's like, oh, we're going to bring the factories back. We're going to get you a job. And he makes it sound like it's going to happen within the next 6 months. And people hear that, right? Because, hey, we want that car plant, or, we want that rubber plant. We want these things, right? But our economy has changed. And a lot of those things that were here before, they're not going to come back.
Yeah.
Dave Chappelle makes the joke, right? I don't want to pay $10,000 for a cell phone, but it is, we have got to get, and this is why I think education is so important, right? And not everybody needs a college degree, but we have got to start working in the high schools and in the schools, right? To start getting people prepped and working for the future of the jobs that are going to be here in America. Yeah. 100%. And I feel like sometimes I think that's where our education system has kind of failed us. And that it's not doing that. And it's really, in a lot of places, it's no different than when my mom went to school in the 60s. I went to school in the 80s and today, right? It is, it's, if anything, it's even less. Because people aren't working with their hands anymore. They're not learning these skills. They're not learning how to do the things that they need to be done in order that are going to make them successful to get out there and to get a job. Yeah, 100%.
You don't want to hear my take on that because I'm the late stage capitalism is the reason all that shit's happening guy. And but yeah, I do agree with you. I don't think that I think that we don't prepare our kids for much of anything. We sell them the false hope of just go to college, it solves all the problems. It does. And we have a Ponzi scheme that's called student loans, that you'll never be out of. You can't buy a house at 18, but you can get $100,000 in debt at 18.
And it
no
is,
problem.
right? It's a big difference. Like, I mean, my parents bought, God, I think I was like 2 years old. That meant my dad was like 23, I think, when he bought their first house, right? A couple years after I was born, they were able to do that. And that doesn't, me, I was 30 years old when I was finally able to afford a house. In order to do that, and it just kind of gets later and later and later. And, my state, people are having to go further and further away from where they work and where they want to be.
And it's late-stage capitalism. It's unregulated capitalism. It is, and I'll say this as a culmination of my beliefs here. The right goes further right, and this is the result of far right. The result of far right is you can't buy a house. The result of far right is you can't make a living wage. The result of far right is diabetes is a death sentence in this country. The result of far right is the rising cost of medicine and pharmaceuticals and homelessness, and these things are a result of far right. But the reason that all that shit's possible is because the left refuses to go far left. What does far left look like? Because people always talk about far left radicals. Far left looks like universal basic income. Far left looks like universal health care. Far left looks like everybody has a house. Far left looks like you get paid a living wage. I mean, if somebody can show me the bad part of the far left, I'm all in. But the left doesn't do it. The Democratic Party slides right a little bit every time they go more right because you're trying to grab them and pull them back. Fuck that. Go that way and counterbalance the weight here. And when we had the House and the Senate and the White House, we should have just went far left, because I'm of the mindset that if we did far left shit and then people, regardless of how they voted, found themselves in a far left environment, they might say, shit, this really ain't so bad.
Yeah.
But we don't do it.
Yeah, I think...
well, go ahead. I was just going to... I think it's little steps, right? Look, I would love to live in the Star Trek world where, there was no monetary use for money or anything, and we all were able to kind of get what we need and what we want, and everybody worked for the good of society. And I think that should be the ultimate goal one time, right? But I'm not where you're at, and I think it is going to take steps in order to kind of get there. I don't disagree.
I just think that the left takes baby steps while the right takes far leaps, giant leaps, right? Like, first of all, communism is that moneyless society you're talking about. And I'm not even really talking, like I said, I'm more of a socialist kind of guy, right? But here's the problem. I hear Democratic representatives say things like, Americans deserve affordable health care. No, shut up. Americans deserve health care. Why are you saying affordable? Yeah. You're still buying into the bullshit. You're still on the capitalist train here. No, affordable means I don't pay shit. Because guess what? I've lived in other countries where I go to the doctor and they're not charging me to come in. They're not asking me my insurance. I just go to the doctor and then I go the fuck home. And that's what Americans want. Americans don't want affordable health care. Americans just want fucking health care. And the problem is the Democratic Party doesn't understand that. They think that these words like affordable health care is what we're looking for. Nope, we're not. We're looking for actual just fucking health care. And we can pay for it. And the right says, well, there's no such thing as free. No shit. Thanks for the education, bud. We know there's no such thing as free. Let's stop wasting money elsewhere and pay for fucking health care. So I do agree with you that there has to be baby steps, of course, or not baby steps, but steps to get there. It's not going to happen overnight. But I just feel like the right is going so far right at a pace that's outpacing any steps we're taking that way, and that we're all going to die because of it.
Yeah. Well, I think there are things. I mean, you're right. Healthcare is it's a right, right?
It is human right.
It's a human right, sir. And it's something that we should have there. But I agree with you, right? I think there are things that we need to make more affordable. There are, like you said, diabetes, right? They have the drugs right now that can go, and a lot of it's like weight loss, but helping to reduce the weight, gastric bypass surgery,
preventative stuff, right? Bingo.
Gastric bypass surgery, which people still kind of see, oh, well, it's cosmetic. It cures diabetes.
Yes.
Right? So why aren't we kind of using that as a means in order to do that, to get rid of type 2 diabetes?
Because in the end, that's actually going to be cheaper for the country.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like for the country, we spend less money if we, spend money on preventative care. I agree with you. Preventative care, nobody talks about it enough. Like I think the insulin to not cure that, but to manage your diabetes costs something in the neighborhood of $75 a year to make. Yeah. And we charge like
they say like $5. What is it? $5 the whatever vial thing is. Vial.
Yeah. And we charge $1,200 for $75 of product.
Yeah.
That should be illegal.
Yeah, no, 100%. I find myself in an interesting place when we're having the healthcare conversation, because I'm at that age where like you say gastric bypass surgery and I'm like, I don't know what that is, and that sounds really scary to me. But I always have come from the perspective that like healthcare is a human right and people should have access to it.
Yes.
And I feel like that's kind of like, if you think America first, that's what America first means, right? America first means that because I'm an American, I can walk into a hospital and I can get health care. You know, because I'm an American, I can walk into exactly. And I think it's particularly interesting when we're having a conversation about the veteran community, and it goes back to the hypocrisy of the Republican Party, right? Where they kept saying, you know, veterans first, we need to put our veterans first, we need to put our veterans first. And then, you know, the reality is that under Donald Trump today, in these United States of America, there are 40,000 homeless veterans. 18 veterans commit suicide every single day. 8% of our incarcerated population are veterans. These are all real problems that we're not dealing with, because anytime that anyone actually says, hey, why don't we give our veterans health care, the right's response is, well, that's socialism. We can't do that. It's the same thing with the pro-life argument.
It should be. That should be, right? And this is one of the things, the services didn't really like it, right? But the electronic health records that we have in the military, we call it Genesis. I don't know what the hell they call that at the VA. I can't remember. But, you know, one of the reasons I'm fighting for that, right, is because it allows a continuation of when you leave the military, of your health record to be transferred over to the VA. So there is no other extra step, right, to where if you want to get taken care of or you want to be seen with the VA, you got to go over to the VA and you got to get seen by them, and they got to do your evaluation of like what's your disability rating, are you going to be eligible? It's just like move it over, right? And you can see it and like, okay, come get your health care, right? Every veteran should have access to health care. They should have access, especially to mental health care. Yeah. Because that's so much need, and that's where a lot of it kind of gets lost.
Absolutely.
You know, because if you're being evaluated things, or you're having those issues there that have already kind of been seen where you're in and then you're getting out, you know, now you just lost your health care.
Yeah.
It was a shock for me. Like, I went to the military as an adult. My first year was being an adult. I'm in the military. Yeah. And I had socialized health care because our Congress gets it and our military gets it, just our people don't.
And prisoners.
In prison. I've never understood why it's the gold standard for our military and our government, but not for the people. But then when I got out of the military, it was my first introduction of, hey, you don't have health care. And that was a shock to me. Like, I was like, what do you mean? I can't just go to a TMC, which is what we call the hospital in the Army. I can't just go get seen, you know? I can't just do that. No, it was, like, really shocking for me. And then when you look at the cost of health care, like, what do you call it, health insurance, like, that was a culture shock for me.
Health insurance, that doesn't work, by the way.
That doesn't work.
Doesn't work. You know,
I
had a friend this past week. She was trying to get her medication, and she... long story short, the insurance company needed to approve it first, and then, you know, for that approval to happen, so there was an interplay so long. It took her 2 weeks to get a medication. Fortunately, it's not a life-saving medication that she needs, but if it was, imagine, right? And the veteran story to me, you know, particularly hits close to home. I had one of my neighbors, you know, growing up, passed away actually last year. He was a Vietnam veteran. I was really close with him. He was actually a conservative man. He always said this thing, which always caught me off guard because he was super conservative, and he always said Jesus was a socialist, and it was just like this juxtaposition. And he was really Christian, but he was a very interesting guy. Yeah, he was an interesting guy, and he had a bunch of problems and complications because of Agent Orange, and it was really sad to see that, like, he wouldn't get full coverage because he was dealing with Agent Orange. He would get, you know, an increase in his coverage. It would go from, you know, 60% to 80% because the Agent Orange progressed and it got worse. And it's a reactionary healthcare system instead of a proactive healthcare system. We only go to the doctor because we have a problem, not because, you know, we might be, you know, looking out for ourselves in the future and preventing that.
And that's what the congressman was talking about, was preventative stuff.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, that's why I love community schools, right? Community schools are schools where the schools are set up to provide services to families and to the students, right? And one of the things is like, let's bring in a dentist and they can kind of check their teeth. Oh, let's do the eye test to make sure they can actually see well, that's not chalkboards anymore, but see the board up there, you know, so they can do these things, right? And those are important. And they provide services to the families for those immigrant families that, you know, don't have to pull their child out of school because they need a translator when they're going to go do something. And so, you know, I think that is a big investment that we should be making in these countries. I'm glad to see there's some school districts in my community that are doing that. And I think that is one of the reasons, you know, I'll say the best school district in the country is the DODEA, Department of Defense Education Activity, because they spend about $50,000, I think, on each. I could be saying that number wrong, but they spend more than any other school district in the country. And in that sense, right, every school is a community school because all those kids have access to health care.
But they're able to do it because of our robust defense budget, right? So like we don't spend the money in the right places. I completely agree with you, 100% agree. I just think that, and to like wrap up my thoughts, and I guess this conversation is that one thing Republicans did was they put some goals on the wall.
Right.
We want to overturn Roe v. Wade. We want a Christian caliphate. We want people to not have human rights anymore, and we want a king. How do we get there? And they've been working towards that for 20, 30 years since Reagan. Reagan started this whole shit. And, the left just isn't doing that. I think the left is afraid to say the things I'm saying right now. Like, hey, we should have free healthcare. Fuck this semantical argument that it's not free. We know it's not free, dumb. But, like, you should be able to go to the doctor without paying shit. Health insurance is a scam. Education should be free. Everyone shouldn't be able to go to university from K through university and not pay a fucking dollar. Student loans are a scam. No one should be homeless. I don't give a fuck. I appreciate the conversation of veterans, but I think that saying veterans shouldn't be homeless, but everybody else is okay, is the wrong answer. Nobody should be homeless. Yeah. And I think the left is afraid to say that. The left is afraid to put those targets on the wall and work towards it. And the right's not ashamed of their bigotry. They're not ashamed to say they've openly said women shouldn't have the right to vote. They've openly said you shouldn't have the right to your own body. They're jailing women for having miscarriages, right? Yeah. They're stripping people of the right actively, but they put those targets on the wall 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and they've been working towards it. Yeah. And we're not. Yeah. And that's what's the frustration part to the American people watching it happen. Why aren't our goals on the wall, and why aren't we strategizing to work towards them?
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. And I think this is an idea that I had, and I want to throw it out here as we're wrapping up the conversation. But going back to the veterans discussion, I agree. It should expand beyond veterans. No one should be homeless in the United States. No American citizen in particular. I do believe anyone, but for the sake of the conversation and the Overton window that we find ourselves in right now, I don't think that any American citizen should be homeless or be facing food insecurity or be wondering, where their next meal is going to come from. But in particular, the class that I think has been harmed a lot by Donald Trump, apart from migrants, has been veterans. 1/3 of federal employees are veterans. He's fired over 300,000 federal employees. That's about 100,000 veterans right there. Not mentioning the 80,000 that he fired from the VA alone. And so I was just curious, have you guys thought, is this something that either of you have considered, like doing a protest at the VA and having veterans come out and let Donald Trump know that veterans are upset about them too, or upset about what's going on too? What are thoughts on that?
The largest veteran protest this year, probably in the last 6 years, is coming up. You're going to hear more and more about it in the coming weeks, but I'll use this podcast as a time to be my first time promoting it. But it's on June 6th, which is chosen specifically because it's D-Day, if you know history. June 6th is the day that we stormed the beach in Normandy. June 6th, right here in D.C., we're going to have a massive veteran protest. We've been planning it behind the scenes. We've been talking about it. Got a big committee. There's a couple organizations that are heading it up. Dropkick Murphys is coming down to play at it. But literally, yeah.
Really? It's Murphy? It's coming down to play?
Yes. So
that's awesome.
Fun story there is I met the guy who was...
it's... Okay.
So I met the guy who was starting to plan this June 6th thing.
Sure.
Because I had heard about it. I heard rumblings about it. Then I was at the Congress at a hearing that was happening in the House, and I ran into the guy who's planning the June 6th. I said, you're planning the June 6th rally? That evening, Ken, the lead singer of Dropkick Murphys, texts me, hey, Jolly, you hear about the June 6th thing? I'm like, how the fuck did Ken hear about it? I'm like, Ken, you're not going to believe this, but I just met the guy who's planning the rally today, just by happenstance. He goes, set us up. So I set them up, so Dropkick Murphys are going to play at it. But the reason we're doing this, the whole point I'm saying all this, the reason that we're putting together this massive veteran rally, because by the way, we just did one in March or April, I don't remember the date, and it was a pretty good size one. So this June 6th one's like part 2 of that, is because of that, is because the Trump administration is firing veterans at a historic rate, is because the Trump administration is dismantling the VA. Veterans across the country are getting letters saying that their disability ratings are being reevaluated. Right now as we speak, this is happening. It's not making the news, but it's happening. And so veterans are quite frankly under attack by this administration. We need to be honest with ourselves. Donald Trump hates veterans. Okay, I'm wearing my Veterans Against Trump shirt.
Called them. What did he call them? He called them chumps.
Yeah, he really believes that like you got to be a dumbass to like go sign up to do that shit. And like, listen, I'm not mad at you for saying that. If that's how you feel, stand on what you believe. What I'm mad about
sounds like Sonny Corleone and The Godfather.
Yeah,
right there.
right. Well, if that's what you believe, stand on it. What makes me mad is that you say it behind closed doors and then come out here and say, I love veterans and I'm all about veterans, right? And you're full of shit. We know how you feel about us, and we don't care. Like, we don't need Donald Trump's approval. What we need is our disability ratings to not be dropped. What we need is our VA care to not be taken away from us. What we need is our jobs not to be taken away from us. What we need is the things we fought for to be kept. So yeah, June 6th, right here in DC. I forget the location off the top of my head, but I think it's National Mall. The biggest veteran rally this year will happen.
Awesome.
Well, I just checked my calendar, and if you'll have me, I'd love to be part of that.
You're in.
I'd love to be part
I'll
of
connect
that.
you with the guys.
Okay.
Yeah, gotcha.
Great.
I'm not a veteran, but I'll be there for moral support. Maybe I'll cheer on.
Yeah, we need everybody there. Like, we want veterans, but veterans' families, veterans, people support veterans. Our goal, I will tell you, is to have a million people there. So that's our goal.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. All right. Well, to wrap up the podcast, I want to do a segment. We usually don't do segments on the show, but I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
You have two options. You got vote or veto, right? So I'm going to give you some different policy proposals. Representative, if you want to participate or withdraw yourself on any of these questions, you're more than welcome to. You tell me whether you would vote for it or veto it. You ready?
Got it.
Universal background checks for all gun purchases.
Vote.
Changing DC from standing for District of Columbia to Donald Circus.
Donald Circus.
I mean, I'm vetoing it because it has no substance. It's not doing anything.
All right. Raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
I mean, I'll vote for it. It's too low, but
Okay.
to start.
Next question was raising the minimum wage for $25 an hour.
We're getting closer. I'll vote for it.
All right. Moving the Washington Commanders back to DC.
Nah, I couldn't give a shit less.
You don't care? You're
No.
not a football guy?
I'm a football guy, but like,
You don't care about the
the
Commanders.
world's burning.
Fair enough.
Who's your team?
yeah.
Who's your team?
Carolina Panthers. I grew up
I'm
in
a
Carolina.
Falcons fan.
Are you really?
Yeah.
So
Paid family leave.
100% vote for that.
A policy proposal authored and supported by former Vice President Dick Cheney advocating for the geopolitical reconfiguration of the Middle East, specifically the redrawing of national boundaries along hydrocarbon resource lines. The plan would prioritize strategic control over oil fields under the guise of promoting regional stability and securing global supply chains.
So
However,
go back to war in Iraq? Is that what I'm hearing?
this reality is such that reconstructing infrastructure contracts will inevitably lead to Halliburton receiving millions of dollars, which is a company that Cheney previously served as CEO.
Correct. So you just described how we went to a war in Iraq. Right. I'm going to veto that, obviously.
Awesome. All right. Glad we're there. Universal health care.
Yeah, 100% vote.
All right. Rivera Maya of the Middle East.
Disgusting. Veto.
Veto. Banning private equity firms from purchasing private homes.
100% veto.
Revising Citizens United.
Revising.
Reversing Citizens United.
Reversing Citizens United.
That was my inability to read them.
Vote.
Okay. And this last one's a would you rather. Ready?
Okay.
Would you rather attend A, a hunting party coordinated by Dick Cheney, or B, a party planned by Matt Gaetz and Madison Cawthorn?
Oh, jeez.
I mean, this is like
A lose-lose situation.
lose-lose
Either
situation.
one's lethal.
Right. I mean, I guess I'd rather go hunting with Dick Cheney. Like, now he's older.
Yeah.
I mean, he'll probably miss everything now. Right? So.
He will not hit his
Even
hunting
me,
partner.
right.
Yeah. All right. Well, that concludes the show. Thank you so much for coming on. It was
Awesome.
wonderful to have you.
Congressman, thanks for having
Oh,
me.
thanks
I appreciate
for being
it.
here. Really do appreciate it.
Thanks so much.